Excellent!
Hey everyone, welcome to Paul's Hardware. Today's video is my July builds. If you guys saw my video in May, I decided, hey, every month at the beginning of the month, I'm going to do monthly builds. I am 1 for 2 so far because I did not do this at the beginning of June because I was at Computex. I was still going to do it, but then too much time went by. Anyway, point being, welcome to my July builds for 2015, and the 2 builds that I'm going to go over today are pretty interesting. I kind of like them. One is an entry-level X99 system, or Haswell E, and those 2 terms don't necessarily go together, but I'll explain when we come to that one kind of what my MO was for that particular build. We also have a $450 console killer. I'm using the term console killer because it's very popular in search results right now. But yeah, it's a $450 build with the potential for a GPU upgrade, and I think you guys will like that one too. That's a Godavari build. Godavari. It's the new AMD APU. But the way this is going to work, these videos in general, is at the beginning of each month I will introduce a couple new builds, and you guys can take those builds and rework them for yourselves or just go for it and build them if you want to. I'm going to be using PC Part Picker, so a big thanks to them for building a fantastic website that makes it really easy to put builds together. The links to PC Part Picker will be in the video's description on YouTube, so you can check that out. But also, there is interaction involved with this video because I want you guys to tell me what builds you want me to do next month, if that makes sense. So I have a straw poll link. I'm also doing this live. Did I mention this is live? Yeah. So I have a straw poll link. I'll post that in chat if you guys want to check that out. And right over here. So go to the straw poll and vote on what kind of system builds you guys want to see me do in August. So I have another console killer, an all-around one, a few other options in there, and you can choose more than one choice, so go ahead and do that, and it will be fun and fantastic. In the meantime, though, let's dive right into build number 1, which is my $450 console killer. Now, basically, what I wanted to do with this build, the way I do all these builds is I come at it with sort of an idea of the build overall. So console killer was what I was going for. I was going for low budget, so you want around $400, $500-ish if you're going for the console killer thing, because it needs to be price competitive with the consoles, of course. And then from there, I just chose parts that I felt were appropriate for this level of build and this price points, and then I picked what's what. Now, of course, there's options for pretty much every single part in here for the most part that you can swap out, but you can do that, or you can use my build and do whatever you want. I did make a couple of assumptions with this build, though. One is that it does not have a GPU. You're going to be using the APU. That's what keeps the price down, but you could easily upgrade to a GPU in the future. Second assumption is that there's no mass storage included with this particular build, which means that you would probably want to add some. I did do an SSD because that's kind of my MO for builds in general. I like to have SSDs. They're just a lot faster. It gives a much better computing experience, but you will probably run out of space fairly quickly, especially if you're installing video games on this system. So another hard drive to add to this system, an older, like, I don't know, 500 gig or terabyte hard drive that you might have lying around, would really round the whole thing out. Other than that, there's an SSD included, and let's just kind of start talking about the parts. Now, AMD has been doing APUs for a while, and this is their Godavari AMD A10 7870K. This is what it's based around. So this is basically the CPU and GPU in one. Now, I most often recommend AMD's APUs because on the CPU side, they're not incredibly powerful. Intel has more powerful CPU options at this price point, which is right around 150 bucks, by the way. But AMD's integrated graphics are very good. And especially for what you get and everything. So this is their newest one. It's Godavari is the code name for it, 7870K. It's 3.9 gigahertz. It's quad core. And the integrated graphics you can get by with playing games on. So that's kind of where we're starting off. The next is the motherboard, which you kind of need a home base for this type of thing, of course. I wanted mini ITX because the console killer thing seems to fit better when it's actually console sized, or roughly that size for fitting in a home theater or something like that. So this is ASRock's FM288X ITX Plus motherboard. Pretty basic mini ITX motherboard. There's actually not a whole lot of mini ITX FM2 Plus motherboards that are out there, but this one's very full featured. You've got tons of choices as far as I/O. There's the connectivity at the back, so you got a couple HDMIs and a dual link DVI. And this again will get you by, and it has a PCI Express X16 slot, which you're not going to use for this particular build, but you would use if you wanted to drop a graphics card in here. And I'd say for this build, $150 to $200 graphics card would do a great job. Something like a GTX 960, for example, or AMD's competing graphics cards in the same range. You do need memory, and whenever you're doing an APU build and you're relying on the integrated graphics, this is the only time I really recommend getting faster memory. This is why this G.Skill Ripjaws Z kit that I chose is actually 2400 speed. Which is pretty fast for DDR3 memory. You can get by with 1600 speed with a normal build, but the 2400 speed memory in this case will give you much better GPU performance for if you're using the integrated GPU, of course, and only $60 for a 2x4 gig kit. Pretty good deal. All right. Moving along, I did integrate storage, and like I said, I like to do SSDs. So this is an ADATA Premier Pro SP600. I've used the M.2 version of this drive, actually. It's a pretty solid drive. I forget the controller that it uses. All I know is it's not SandForce. When it comes to SATA Rev 3 SSDs, as long as it's not SandForce, I mean, SandForce drives are okay too. It's just you don't always get the best performance when it comes to incompressible data, whereas the other drives that are using other controllers don't suffer from that problem. Anyway, so there's your solid state drive, the ADATA Premier Pro, and only $80 for a 256 gig. Frickin' SSD. That's incredible. For a case, I went with an old standby from Mini ITX. That's the Cooler Master Elite 130. You can see this has very good ratings across the board, and that is because of multiple different things. Here, let's check out the actual Newegg page for this. $45. There is a newer version of this, but it's like $30 or $40 more. It's got a nice overall look. It's got USB 3.0 in the front. Mini ITX. You even have a full-size 5¼ inch bay that you can use or not use depending on how you want to configure things. And man, Newegg's pictures aren't loading up for me very fast. It's got a pretty good layout inside, and you can fit a full-size ATX power supply, full ATX. Although the length of it might be limited, but this has really good reviews overall, and I've worked with it before, so it's a case that I can recommend. And for the price, which is as little as $30 right now, if you are okay with mail-in rebates. Holy crap, the Elite 130 from Cooler Master. And that brings us to the last component for this build, which is the power supply. And for this one, my qualifications for the power supply was I wanted around 500 watts, so you could accommodate a full-size GPU if you decided to drop that in here. I wanted 80 plus bronze at least, which this has. ATX, of course, to be compatible with the case. And then I wanted one that was short. Basically short when it comes to the length. This way, 140 millimeters is about as short as you can get. And the EVGA, what's the stupid model on this one again? The 500 watts, 500B is the model in this one. 80 plus bronze. It's got a single 12 volt rail. Granted, the cabling's not that pretty, but hey, this is a budget build, so you gotta make do with certain stuff. It is not modular, which is the other limitation. But honestly, when you're working in a small case, sometimes non-modular power supplies can be better, only in certain situations because you don't use quite as much space for them plugs that are going up in there. But okay, let's move right along. That is my first build, which again is the $450 console killer. Now, if you guys are looking at this and being like, it sucks because it doesn't have a graphics card, well, you're right to some extent. It would be much better with a graphics card, but I always like having the upgrade path with any system that I design. And as previously mentioned, you could easily drop a nice graphics card in here for 150 or 200 bucks, really bump up your gaming performance. But for the time being, for around 450 bucks, you can get this all put together on the hardware side, and you can get yourself a computer that you can use to game. That's small, and it's not going to use a whole lot of power too. Anyway, I liked how that one turned out. I was actually aiming for more like a $500 price point, and then it came out to be $450, and I was like, hey, sweet. That's super sweet. But anyway, let's move on to the next build, which is my entry-level X99 build. Now, X99 is Intel's enthusiast platform. That's the highest of the high end, and Intel has been segmenting their consumer platforms like this for, I don't know how many years now, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9 years. It's hard to say. 2006, 2007, I think, was when they first brought out X99. Anyway, X99 is awesome because it's where you can get the fastest hardware that's available. It's the only place to get DDR4 memory right now, although that will be changing soon once Skylake launches next month. It's going to remain faster than Skylake. We can be pretty confident of that right now. which means that if you're going to build a system right now, but you're worried, oh, maybe I should wait for Skylake, then this is a good way around it because you don't have to worry about Skylake being faster. Skylake might be faster on the CPU, like instructions per clock side, but it's really not something I would be overly concerned about. So let's say you want the X99, you want the power, you want the longevity because X99 platform usually remains valid for a good 3 years. You want the general badassery of being like, I've got a 5000 series X99 processor, LGA 2011-3 motherboard, the X99 chipset and Haswell E, but it's expensive. To get in on the ground floor, even with the base level products, is well, expensive, especially if you looked at when it launched last year, because DDR4 prices were insanely expensive. But DDR4 prices have come down, so it's a lot more accessible now. And as previously mentioned, who cares if Skylake is launching if you're on X99 with a Haswell E? Now you could with this go like full budget. You could just be like, I want the cheapest parts possible. But I do feel like this platform kind of lends itself to a higher standard. So I wasn't going for the cheapest of the cheap when it comes to the components here. I was looking for stuff that was inexpensive, but commensurate with the power and prestige that comes with X99 and Haswell E. So let's move on to this build here. And let's start off by saying that the CPU in this case is pretty much a no-brainer. There's only 3 CPUs available on this platform. The 5960X is $1,000. The 5930K is I think $550 or $600. 5820K, which is what we're going to be using, is much more reasonably priced. Although granted, it is still $370. That's if you buy it here. Now, if you live close to a Micro Center, and I said this in the last video too, you can get it for $300, but you got to go into a store and pick that up. And then you have to buy a bunch of other stuff from, you don't really have to buy other stuff from Micro Center, but that is a good way of saving some money on your processor. But we're not going with Micro Center prices here, we're going with full prices for the 5820K. It's a 3.3 gigahertz, it's 6 cores. It gives you pretty much everything the 5930K gives, except I believe it has a little bit less cache, and you get fewer PCI Express lanes. The PCI Express lanes were a concern for me at launch, but if you're not planning on doing like a 3 or 4-way SLI configuration or like maxing out all of your storage, then the lanes you get with the 5820K, which, oh gosh, what is it, 28? I think you get 28. You're still pretty good. All right, moving on to the next piece. We need a cooler, of course. I'm not going to go with the stock cooler like I did in the last build, since this is a higher end one, and you don't get a cooler with the 5820K, so you need something. I went with an air cooler. This is kind of me sticking with the whole, like, I think air coolers do a really good job and save you a good amount of cache over the larger size, say 240 millimeter all-in-one liquid coolers. And this is actually a throwback to the last May builds, because I already used this in the May builds. This is Enermax's cooler. That's a super tiny picture of it. Maybe there's a better picture on NCIX. Let's see. But it's black. It does a really good job. You can get it for 40 or 45 bucks. And if that's your range, your price range, 30 to 45 bucks-ish for a CPU cooler, I think this one will do a good job for you. All right, that's not loading, so I'm just going to leave it. But yeah, 40 bucks right now at NCIX US. And the other thing, oh, did I mention yet that I'm going to be building this system? I'm going to be building this system. So there was a slight influence of that, and the fact that I have this cooler definitely helped me out as well, or influenced my decision for it. All right, next we have a weird one. Whoops, wrong button. Next we have a weird one in this Gigabyte motherboard. This is actually a placeholder that I used. I chose this X99 Gaming, which is a perfectly fine and legitimate motherboard for LGA 2011-3. It's a little bit more expensive. It's about, well, it's still reasonable, $260-ish. But the board I'm actually going to be using for the build is this brand new one from Gigabyte. This is the X99 SLI. Yeah, it's $250. Going back to my like MO for like choosing the parts for this, and look, I even have it right here. My MO for choosing the parts for this build was, at least for the motherboard side, was at launch all the motherboards were like 300 bucks. They have some that came down to like 250-ish. I was thinking $200 to $250. So that's why the X99 SLI I thought was a good choice from Gigabyte. It's from Gigabyte, so you know it's got all their ultra durable quality and stuff in there. A ton of features on the board, and the one qualification that I really didn't want to shirk, since I am going for a full-size build with this build, is for X99 I like having 8 DIMM slots. And there are some less expensive boards than this, that have 4 DIMM slots, but I just like having 8. I like being able to expand that memory because if you're on this platform, chances are you're doing a bit more than gaming, and having more to work with will be a good option. All right, so there's the motherboard, the X99 SLI, although again, I did a workaround with it and it did a placeholder. Let's move on down the line. We need memory, of course. Look at this G.Skill Ripjaws 16 gig kit, DDR4 2133. This is the black kit because it matches with just about everything. And this kit costs $130. $130 right now. Do you remember when DDR4 came out last year? This kit was $300. So that's just the benefit of ramping up production, I suppose, because I really like that you can get DDR4 so cheap, and especially important since Skylake's coming out and people are going to be looking for it on not just the X99 platform. All right, so memory is taken care of, and oh, by the way, that's what I consider to be the bare minimum for this platform, 4x4 gigs, unless you're dealing with like fewer memory slots or you're just really going super budget. But like, I don't know, you're getting a quad channel platform. You should use quad channel memory. Oh, and hello to everyone who has joined in chat. Thank you guys all for jumping in and joining me here. Hope you're enjoying. Okay, let's move on to storage here. I wanted a 500 gig SSD. Here's another place where you could save some money if you're going entry-level. X99 is maybe a 256 gig SSD. But again, this is enthusiast platform, so it's like the 500 gig, the 250 gig drives have dropped so much. You saw the one in the first build for $80. You can get a 500 gig 850 Evo, which is a higher end SSD for 165-ish, 170. That's for 500 gig SSD. I have to say, having a 500 gig SSD is awesome. You just load all your games onto it. It's fantastic. And the Evo series is one that I've worked with and I like. I did add some mass storage here, just a WD Caviar Green 3 terabyte 5400 RPM internal drive. A quick tip for you guys who don't follow the commodities market very much. The odd quantity drives, or like capacity drives, like your 3 terabyte drives, for example, or your 1.5 terabyte drives that were out for a little while, didn't sell as well as the even drives, like your 2 terabytes and your 4 terabytes. For that reason, only occasionally, I've noticed you can find 3 terabyte drives for a considerable deal. That's not to say I did a whole lot of searching around for this one, but a Caviar Green's a good drive. It's not super fast, but it's not going to use a lot of power, and just for mass storage, it's a great job, and it's less than $100 for 3 freaking terabytes. So that's pretty good too. All right, now I'm going to come back to the graphics card. Graphics card is the most controversial decision for this, and I want to come back to it. Let's talk case though. We have a Phanteks Enthoo Pro. And again, if you guys aren't familiar, you guys are probably familiar with Enthoo Pro. This is one of the cases that came out within the last year that just kind of blew everyone away as far as its capabilities and everything. And I have not even worked with it. I have done next to zero with it, other than watching Dimitri's fantastic video and kind of being like, wow, that looks like a really nice case. But fortunately, I have one of these being shipped here. I'm going to do this build in this case, so I'm going to get to try out the Enthoo Pro. And if you guys are watching this video in the future, check out the Enthoo M from Phanteks. It's not available right now. I was going to see if I could get it for this build, because it's going to be it's like the Enthoo Pro kind of with a few parts stripped out, but you still get the same general chassis and a lot of the same features, and it's cheaper. I think it's $70 or $80 depending on what color you get. But that would be a great way of getting a case that, again, is going to fit with this type of build. And my price range for case in this one was about $80 to $100. That's kind of what I felt, where you could get a nice case that would get the job done, but not look like you're cutting corners too much and buying like the cheapest $40 ATX case that you could find. Rounding out the parts here for the power supply, I have this one. This is a Thermaltake 750 watt 80 plus gold semi-modular ATX power supply. Now this one again, I chose for a few different reasons. I was looking for less than $100 to the power supply. I wanted at least 700 watts. I wanted 80 plus gold because I wanted a better efficiency and higher build quality. And those were kind of my main qualifying factors. This fell in here and it worked out perfectly because it's got actually some pretty good cabling, which is another thing that I'm looking at with power supplies more so these days. If you guys have been watching my channel recently, you might know why. It's got nice black cabling, so it's going to look good. It's 80 plus gold rated. It's got good reviews overall, good internal build quality, and I have not this power supply, but I have a very, very similar power supply to this over here, the Tough Power DPSG, which is more expensive than this, but it meant that I already had the power supply to use for the build, so that was my other reasoning behind this one. Okay, finally, the video card. Now, here's what it comes down to for the video card for this system. Like, there's so many options, and I was really, really torn. And originally I was gonna say, get a 980 Ti or a Fury X, because both of them are about 650 bucks. You know, there's things you could say about either of them, and you know, I think that would get the job done, but that would bring the price point up a fair amount. So that's why I didn't choose them, at least specifically for this right now. The other options that are out there, other than the 390X, which I've chosen, here, let me actually show you guys the video card that I chose, rather than just sitting here talking about it. This is the MSI Radeon R9 390X 8 gig video card, and you can see a picture of it right there. Looks very similar to a lot of their gaming graphics cards lately, but that's the Twin Frozer 5 cooler, I believe, and it does a really good job. So the reason I chose this was it's newer, which you know, which is nice when it's newer. Granted, it's still a 290X on crack, but reason number two, I have it. So I can do the build with it. I also found that for the price point for this, which is a little over 400 bucks right now, about 420 or $430, you get a lot of performance. You get 8 gigs of VRAM, and you get the best GPU that AMD is making right now outside of the Fury, without spending as much money on the Fury. And the reviews for the 390X, even compared to, even knowing that it's a 290X kind of cracked out with 8 gigs of RAM, have been very positive. So for that reason, that's why I went with this. So you guys can feel free to argue in the comments if you agree with that decision or you don't agree with that decision, but at least for the sake of posterity, other options out there would have been a 970, a GTX 970 on the NVIDIA side, of course, or even a 390 non-X version if you're going for more budget. You could go with the GTX 980 for more money, although the 390X and the 980 have, you know, 390X can beat out the 980 at times, especially if you're looking for higher resolution. So if you're going for 4K, maybe something to consider. And then of course the 980 Ti or the Fury X on the top end, which again, it's just more money. It's another $200 plus that you're adding on top. So there you have it. But those are my builds, and I hope you guys have learned a little bit about, well, the builds, and maybe giving you guys some ideas for builds of your own, or maybe just take my builds and build them. That'd be cool. I'm going to do that with at least the entry-level X99 build in just a while. And I will say it's nice that you can get a fully fleshed out, like pretty good high-end system with the 5820K in it for $1,700. Or this actually comes in less than $1,700. That's a lot less than you would have needed to spend, say, 6-7 months ago. So I thought that was a win overall. But guys, don't forget to vote on the straw poll and let me know what builds you want me to work on for next month. Don't forget to leave me comments in the comments section and argue over whether I made the right choice with using the 390X in my entry-level X99 build. Sorry for some of the background noise. But yeah, do all that stuff, and thank you guys so much for watching my channel. Of course, you can subscribe for more videos just like this one, and we'll see you next time on Paul's Hardware. You guys are fantastic. Thanks for being here. All right, everyone. We'll see you all later. Have a good day. Tune in tomorrow. Tomorrow's Tuesday. We'll be doing Awesome Hardware tomorrow. That's over on the Awesome Hardware channel, though. But I will be streaming back on this channel tomorrow night. Oh, there went my... Look at that. That was perfect timing. This is something telling me I should stop streaming because the camera just turned off. Okay, I'm cutting the stream now. Goodbye, everyone.